Welcome back to the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, also known as The Athletic Hour. Zach Jackson and myself both work at The Athletic, and so does our next guest, Zack Meisel, joining us from an undisclosed location in Seattle. Guardians opening night tonight. Game will end after midnight. I hate these late starts, Zach. We were whining about that in the first hour, how insane this is to start so late. But anyway, welcome. How are you, buddy?
I actually learned a little bit about how that works because I said the same thing. I said, why wouldn't you start it at 1 or 4 local time and then...
I said no game should start after 4 p.m. on opening day. 4 p.m. should be the latest start time allowed. Tell me why that's incorrect.
No, it is correct, but it's the Mariners who get to choose. And so it's as simple as they can pack this place better if it's a night game, they believe. So
yeah,
here we are. I'll let you know what happens when you wake up.
Oh, I'm staying up. I'll watch. We got hoops on. We got college hoops on tonight.
I'll be up too.
I'm locked in, man.
Yeah,
I love baseball. But Zach, we played a game in the first segment or in the first hour of the show. Fill in the blank. The Guardians will win blank games, finish blank in the division, and the season will end with blank.
You asking me to?
I'm asking you to play along. Well, you just wake up?
Kind of. It's I don't want to. I want to do the no fence riding thing here, right? I don't want to bore your listeners right off the rip. But this team is so hard for me to figure out. And Jason, I kind of feel like, you know, when you say something positive and everyone's like, "Whoa, hold on! I thought you were dead inside." That's kind of where I'm at with this team, where I see all the projections and like I've seen 75 wins by one computer system and 76 by another. I talked to someone for a different organization in their front office, and that person told me they have the Guardians at 76 wins in their internal database, and I'm like, I just don't understand. I don't get it. I watched Nolan Jones take 400 some at bats. I watched Carlos Santana. I watched Jonathan Rodriguez hit cleanup in a playoff game. Like it cannot be as bad as what we watched. I talked to a player the first week of camp, and I said, "Give me the sales pitch. Like, what makes you optimistic?" And he said, "Look at our offense. We cannot be any worse." And so I'm like, okay, you guys realize that. I'm excited about Chase Delauter and eventually Travis Bazzana and Joey Cantillo and Slade Ciccone. And like, I think there's a lot here. Now, the most important person in the organization this year is the freaking trainer, because he's got to keep these people healthy.
Yep.
But like,
I mean, the three of us picked him to go to the playoffs, by the way.
Yeah.
So we're way off the scales.
The funny thing is that the Royals were going to be my dark horse all off season. I thought they'd win the division.
Oh, wow.
Then the Tigers signed Framber Valdez, and I'm like, okay, let's come back to earth here. And then I think just thinking through during spring training the way that this could work, and like looking at the lineup now, I think is already better than what it was last year. And you know, you add Bazzana to the mix, you give Valera back, and I don't think that's the too distant future. And like the lineup might actually be decent, and the rotation's got to stay healthy because they have no depth. But I think this team is actually more formidable than it's been the last couple of years. So this is a long-winded way of not answering your question.
You should be a politician.
I don't know. Like the safe play would be to say they finish second, they win like 87 games, and they make the playoffs. But I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. You know, like if Delauter and Gavin Williams get hurt, they could win 74.
That's exactly what I said.
Right, but if they stay healthy, they could win 92. Like that's not impossible.
Yeah.
So
I said we're counting on guys. We're counting on guys who never stay healthy, and we're just assuming that suddenly they're now going to be healthy and everything's going to break right. I'm like, okay, well if Delauter misses 2 months and Valera can't stay healthy because he's already hurt, now this lineup looks a lot like it did last year, and now I do see a world where 75 is in play.
Yeah, I just think. The two guys who had the best springs on the pitching side were Ciccone and Cantillo, and that's huge for them because we have a lot of questions beyond Williams and Bibee, right?
Yep.
And then you think about who had the best springs in terms of position players, and it was Delauter, it was Angel Martinez, it was all the guys you need to step up. Bo Naylor looked great. So I don't know. Maybe I'm just drunk on spring optimism. It's possible. But it's. I just think they're more formidable. I think what's going to happen is it's going to be maybe a little ugly in the early going. This first road trip's brutal. You come home, you get the Cubs, the Royals. You have to go to Atlanta. Like the first month of the season is just it's rough.
Yeah.
But if they weather that, I think the roster's going to get better as they go, and the schedule eases up. Like I think what's going to happen is it's maybe a little tumultuous at the early going, and then by the summer, when everyone's paying attention to training camp, like they usually do, they'll sneak up on you and they'll have people feeling good about where they're at.
Zach, the folks who are looking for a place to put the Flacco statue and the Donovan Mitchell statue, do they have to get ready for a Delauter statue right away or no?
I almost worry if we're like overdoing the hype, and I'm as guilty as anybody. I've seen the Rookie of the Year odds go from like 22-1 to, and our buddy TA said he got 14-1 yesterday. So, I mean, it's all predicated on health. I think the remarkable thing about him is he missed. Had some leg tightness early in spring, and he sat out for like 4 or 5 days. It's not like there's no rust. This guy just falls out of bed and hits. So it means a lot when a risk-averse organization like the Guardians took a kid who hadn't played in an actual game in 3 months and said, "Hey, I know that we might get eliminated from the playoffs today, but go out and make your debut." Like it's for the Guardians to do that is mind-blowing, and it shows you just how talented this kid is if he can just stay on the field.
Zach, I got a lot of optimism for one Gavin Williams in the 2026 campaign, primarily because of how we finished the 2025 season. I even told Mikey McNuggets my big bold prediction was that Gavin Williams was going to lead the American League in wins. Talk about Gavin Williams' potential if he's healthy for the season. What's the ceiling for him?
I mean, it's an ace, right? Like he was a first round pick. He was a top 25 prospect. He has all those credentials. Like it's not because he's not your prototypical Cleveland starter where they get some kid who's off the radar, but he throws strikes. They add a few miles an hour on the fastball, and suddenly they're Corey Kluber or they're Shane Bieber. Like this is the dude with elite stuff. Like he can blow you away. He's got a great curveball and he racks up strikeouts. So that's the formula is can you just pepper the strike zone? Can you not nibble like we saw last season when there's a start he had in Toronto where he was like through 4 1/3 innings and he was at 107 pitches and everything was painful. It was like a root canal. And, you know, he changed some things and I think he just made a concerted effort to just stop messing around and throw strikes. And maybe that would lower his strikeout total because guys would make more contact, but it worked. Like he looked like an ace for the last few months last season. So, you know, I think the next step for him is just pitching deeper into games. Can you give him 200 innings? And with that probably comes 200 strikeouts. It probably comes with some, you know, Cy Young votes.
I know Zach worked literally over a year on the story you just wrote the other day about the timeline and the transfer of power from the Dolan family to David Blitzer. So I just want to give you a moment to just sort of extrapolate everything that you wrote. The first time David Blitzer can take majority control is after the 27 season. Really, he holds control of when that will be, and if there is a work stoppage, he can kick that can down the road until later. Just tell us everything that you know, everything that you learned on this transfer that is impending, I think we can say at this point, and what the Guardians franchise may look like on the other side under a David Blitzer-led group.
Nobody knows because there's so much uncertainty with the league, and I think that's the issue here. Is you know, you can dream up some fantasy where this super wealthy guy comes in and spends a ton of money, but the league has to change for that to take place. I think you know I think it's more of a partnership maybe than I realized. Like the Dolans plan to be part of this forever. I think like it won't be Paul Dolan's decision; it'll be his kids' decision if that family ever gets out of this. So when Blitzer does take over, he's majority owner, but the Dolans are still going to be minority owners and have a say. It's just Blitzer has the final say, right? So I think the key here is like, yeah, Blitzer could take over after next season. He could do what a lot of new owners do and make a goodwill gesture and sign some free agent kind of like the Edwin Encarnacion bit 10 years ago, and that's great. But I think what a lot of people feel is for there to be like substantial changes in the way the Guardians operate, MLB is going to have to change. And we just don't know what this looks like because the collective bargaining agreement is going to expire on December 1st. There's probably going to be a lockout. No one knows if it's going to extend into next season. Will there be a salary cap? And the big thing is a salary floor. The Guardians have the lowest or second lowest payroll in baseball. It's $75 million right now, which is inexcusable. But if there's a salary floor, they might have to double that. And so I don't think Paul Dolan's going to want to do that. I don't think even David Blitzer is going to want to do that unless there's centralized TV revenue or just something changes on that front. So a lot
go ahead.
No, I just there's a huge question mark, and a lot of it's related to the league and the union.
I don't want to turn this into economics 101, but a salary floor would indicate you're forced to spend up to a certain level, and I don't think people realize how much the league already gives the Guardians to begin with, and under this revenue sharing plan. So I'm all for a salary floor. I just don't know, is the league going to give them even more money to allow them to meet it? But I guess that's more me venting. There's not really a question in there. But I guess the thing I would ask is explain to people like we're 5-year-olds how a team in 2026 can have a payroll that we haven't seen since the 90s. Because I don't care about a TV contract being cut in half. That doesn't fully explain to me how it's acceptable to have a payroll at $75 million.
The best way I can explain it is there's 30 teams in MLB. 29 of them hate the Guardians. And here's why. The Pirates and the Rays, the Rays are a bad example. The Pirates and the White Sox or the teams that don't spend usually don't win. And so those teams hate the Guardians because the Guardians don't have incentive to spend money because they still win the Central most years, right? So no, they should spend more. They should do more to get over the hump. They haven't won a World Series in 78 years. But those small market teams that don't have the consistent track record of winning can't stand the Guardians because the Guardians get away with it because they do win. And then the big market teams look at the Guardians and they say, you're doing so much right. Why don't you just spend money? Because you're making us look bad. You're making the Mets look bad because the Mets spend $350 million and they don't win. And then it powers the Guardians' argument that, hey, money doesn't necessarily translate to championships, right? So that's why if you ever wonder, why don't the small market owners band together and argue with the big market owners that, hey, we need better revenue sharing in this sport and everyone needs to be on an equal playing field? Well, it's because the league does kick back revenue sharing to those small market teams and make it so that they're not as motivated to spend a ton. So the league has needed overhaul economically for decades and decades. Yes. And I say this all the time, but you look at the NFL, Kansas City can keep Patrick Mahomes his whole career. It's a small market. They don't have to worry about, okay, he's got 1 year left on his deal. Do we need to trade him to New York or LA? No, we never talked Green Bay can make the Super Bowl and Roger Goodell's not worried about the ratings going down because it's a small market. So we never have these conversations in football. And I can't wait for the day that we don't have them in baseball. I just don't know if that's ever going to happen.
All right, Zach, we got to cut you loose, buddy. I appreciate it. Have fun tonight.
Thanks, Zach.
And read Zach's article on Jose Ramirez that came out today. It was terrific.
Yeah.
Well worth your read.
Zach had a great article. He always writes great stuff on Jose. You can get more of Zach on his podcast with Bull that he does every week. They do a Guardians show every week. Zach is the chronicler of Jose, I think is fair to say. And he's a unique figure because he rarely ever talks. But Zach still finds angles and ways to get in to tell interesting stories about him. So
imagine if he did talk. Think you think some of Mike's topics about the Browns as well. Imagine if Jose
talked. Part of the reason that he loves Cleveland is because he doesn't have to. Because he can just live in the corner of the locker room and people leave him alone.
That's why he the OG.
Yeah.